Hey everybody, it's Tag Life Done Free. Hey, I have another special guest today, Garen from Grumpy Acres. Garen and Angela were put in the same type of situation that I was put in, and I hope you guys enjoy these videos where we talk to other people who have dealt, with these kind of things. If you do like it, if you do love freedom, do us a favor, like, subscribe, but most important, comment. I really enjoy the comments. I go through, I read every one, and it also gives me ideas, so you can impact the channel. But anyway, without further ado, this is Garen. This is Garen from Grumpy Acres, and if you haven't been over to check out their channel, make sure you do that. Garen and I have been friends for some period of time, and Garen got himself kind of into the same type of situation that I was in, and I thought it would be useful, and he thought it'd be useful if he stopped by and shared his story. So I guess before we talk about all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you did, a year ago before all this stuff happened?
Okay, Tag. First, I want to say thank you for having me over, and I want to say thanks to all your subs that have come over and given us support on our channel. It's meant a lot to us. So I am by trade an IT professional. I've been doing it for 30 some years, and up until 6 months ago, I was working for the Department of Defense, doing IT support for a state National Guard. It was a good gig. It allowed me to buy back my retirement time. So I was working towards my pension, and I was working, I only had like 8 years left to work before I got my pension. It would have been a really good pension too. What led us here where we are now is the mandates, the shop mandates that were coming down from the federal government. And I made the decision that was something I couldn't do. So we ended up on the path that we're on now.
Yeah. So, you and I talked about this a lot, when this was all going on. And I remember you saying, man, I'm just not sure what to do. And those kind of things. And so what made you make the call? I mean, what got you to the point where you went from, worried and scared to action?
Well, even before COVID hit and before the whole mandate shot thing came down, I was waking up in the morning, and I was really beginning to question whether morally I could work for the government. The being in the DoD, I got a front row seat to everything that was going on, and I saw the way the government operated, and I really had to reassess my stance on things. And so I was questioning the path that I was on even before COVID happened. And then the COVID came down, and the whole mandate thing didn't really manifest itself until the second year. But if you were on the inside working for the government, you could see it coming. I knew it was going to be something that was going to happen even before they made it public, because the writing was on the wall. And so my wife Angela, if you're on our channel, you know her as Yoda. We discussed it, and we were we were looking, if it was going to happen, we were looking for a way out. We were looking to get out ahead of it so that we didn't have to get into the same situation that a lot of people were in, where they couldn't make the decision to be free because they financially weren't set up for it.
Garen, for me, when all this stuff was going down, it really didn't have a lot to do with the shop for me personally. It had more to do with, how dare my employer think they had any kind of ownership, over my body, and, how dare it's just intrusive. I'm not going to share my MRI. I'm just not doing it. And so it became really more about that. But for you, was it more about just the mandate, or was it more about actually the jab? What was it actually about?
Well, I say the shot, but it was actually the loss of sovereignty, the somebody telling me that I have to do something with my body. And they lied to us. The medical establishment and the media, they lied about it. And if I honestly thought it was safe and effective, I would have taken it. I'm not anti-vaccine. If you have to change the definition of something to make it mean what you want it to mean, then it wasn't what it was to begin with, and they did that twice. And so it was a choice of freedom. It's personal choice. It's personal freedom. And I wasn't going to have, there wasn't going to be anybody telling me what I have to do with my body. I worked as a wage slave my entire life, and I had other people telling me what I had, and I couldn't do. And I just finally, I was drawing the line at my body. That's, if we can't control our bodies, then we can't control anything in our lives. If they treat us like we're chattel, or they treat us like we're some sort of medical experiment for them to use, then we're not free.
Yeah. I know that once you made the decision that there was a lot of challenges that were going to go on. I mean, you guys were living, it's a different state. I know you had a mortgage, you had all these things going on. And so can you talk a little bit about the financial road? Once you made that decision that, hey, you're going to be sovereign, talk a little bit about the financial road. What came next? How did you guys put the pieces in place to be free today?
Well, you asked a year ago, but the journey down that road started back in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
We were young. We did not have good financial sense,
Mm-hmm.
but we worked for 20 some years to become financially, well, we weren't free because we had a mortgage and we had consumer debt. But our end goal was always to become debt free at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And we just maneuvered it, and we were planning on it. And quite frankly, we did not plan to make the move when we made it. We didn't have the plans to do it, but things worked out. And like I said in the beginning of the interview, we saw what was coming, and we were able to maneuver and put the pieces in place. My wife's a real estate agent, and we saw the coming market crash, and you can already see it manifesting itself in the markets on the coast. And the rental prices being so high because BlackRock has come in and bought all the properties and raised rental prices. So we knew the market was gonna crash at some point. So I guess you could call it a perfect storm. We were the reason to become free was there, the whole mandate thing, our ability to be free. We owned a house that we bought it 8 years ago, and we put enough equity into it, and the market heated up enough that it was almost a $500,000 house property. It was the property. It wasn't really the house, it was the property. So we were able to take all the pieces, but it didn't start a year ago. It started 20 years ago, and we worked at it. Now, I say that, and I don't want anybody to think, well, I don't have 20 years. You can do it. You can do it right now. You can do it like in short order, just realizing that you're not going to be able to leverage everything as well as we did, and I'm not saying all this to say, oh, look how smart I am. I'm just saying that you can do it. It may look hard, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they feel overwhelmed because they don't think they have any time, and they're right. Time is short, but you can still do it. All right. That's if anything, walk away with that, to know that you can become free too.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to be part of this process for you and your wife, Garen, and it was fun to watch, and there were times where I know you're well, you don't have any hair, but pulling your hair out, and those kind of things. But one of the things that I don't think you give yourself enough credit for is the game that got played. And what I mean by that is, you were going through these tribulations. You had a house that had a bunch of equity in it, and by maneuvering the right chess pieces in the right place, I mean, you took all of that and ended up owning a homestead free and clear.
Right.
I mean, that's a game of chess, but and you got to be able to play that game. And so what was that like?
Well, you're right. It was definitely a wild ride. And I think the key to what you're talking about there is we've known each other for what, 7-8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole time that we've known each other, you've always talked about the intentional community.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons that we pulled the trigger and we made the move over to this area was because of the homestead circle. Mm-hmm. And Angela and I were talking about it actually right after the fire that happened 2 weeks ago. We did not have a support structure back at our old place, and we had lived in that town, in that area, for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And we did not have the support structure in place that we have here. And had we not had the support structure, I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure, number one, that the game would have been played the way it was.
Mhm.
And number two, I'm not sure we could have pulled it off, because you and B fostered our livestock, our flock, and Darren and Patty up at Hacks for the Homesteader, they fostered our goats and our sheep until we could get some infrastructure built for them. And if we didn't have help, there's no way we could have done it. And so that was really important. So you say it was a well played game, but it was a team effort. It was not.
Yeah.
It was not just Yoda and I making those decisions and playing that game.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to getting Darren and Patty on from Hacks for the Homesteader.
Yeah.
He's quite the the MacGyver kind of guy, and they have a similar story, and we'll get them here at some point.
Actually, we came up with a nickname for him, right?
Huh.
Cletus from
Yeah. Yeah,
because he can fix anything.
that guy can fix absolutely anything. I don't want to derail the interview, but just tell a little quick story. We do a thing, or have done in the past, a thing called a homestead rotation. And that's where a bunch of us will go to one homestead and do a little bit of work. And excuse me, it was a while ago, but we all went to, this is back when Garen and Angela lived and another state away, but we drove over there because they needed firewood put up. And so there was about, I don't know, 20 or 30 of us there. And we had, 10 chainsaws. And every time one would stop running, I would just take it, walk back over, set it down, pick up another one. And, Darren would sit there all day long, just keeping them running. And there was several times during the day, I sat back with a smile on my face because the machine just worked. And I don't know how much wood, Garen, we put up that day, but it was a ton.
We ended up, from the time we had that work day to the time we left, we burned 10 cords of wood. So that was about a year and a half worth.
Yeah.
Well, two winters. And there was probably another 3 or 4 cords in a pile in unsplit rounds. That was really hard to walk away from, because there was a lot of hard work and a lot of community that went into that. And I'm still waiting for you guys to have a work day over here, because we owe you guys. I know there's no ledger book, but we owe you guys a work day.
Yeah, there's no ledger. The reason why I've been hesitant to do it is, if I want to do it, I want to do it a day I can stand a barn. Like, I want to take advantage of it, you know. And so I just kind of waited until then. But anyway, I don't want to derail. So let's get back to your story a little bit. So, once you made the decision to choose freedom, and you said, hey, this is what we're going to do. And now that you've made, the move over, I know a lot's changed for you. So how's life different on this, homestead versus your homestead before? Because you've homesteaded for years. This is nothing new to you.
We've been, I gardened. We were on a suburban lot, and I gardened and raised rabbits and quail for a good 10 years before we moved to the old homestead. And then we were out there for 8 years, so I've been doing the gardening. I've been doing all the basics of it for quite a long time. What's changed the most for us, I've got a job out here and I go to work, but between Angela and I, we took almost a 60% pay cut. But the one thing we found is we could afford to take a 60% pay cut because we didn't have a mortgage. We were living in an area where the cost of living is much, much lower. I cut my drive to work. I was driving 32 miles one way just to get to work and back, and so I'm driving less than 5 now. So it all adds up. So one of the things when you become free and you don't have a mortgage is you don't need as much. So you don't have to, you have more choices. It gives you more choices, and the other thing, and it's got to do with the property. The property ended up being a lot more work than what we thought it was going to be. And it's just taking a lot more. And then, we had the setback with the fire. There was absolutely zero infrastructure set up when we got there. So we're literally starting from scratch. Well, and quite honestly, we're starting from less than zero, because I'm finding out that property is just littered with trash in the top 4 to 6 inches of soil. And you can't stick a shovel in the ground up there near the house without hitting broken glass or plastic or something. You know, I just moved 250 tires the other day to another location. I collected them, and I still miss some, you know, but that's what's different. The positives on the place, the topsoil is 12 inches thick. At the old place, it was 4 inches and then clay. So I was having to really heavily amend the soil when we were doing the garden and stuff. I'm able to put manure down and till it in, and we're going to be good to go. If we can get the rain to stop, you know, it's been rainy and snowy for the past 2 weeks, and I can't get in. I am going to have to till. I know there's probably people out there going, no till. We're going to have to till this year, whether we want to or not. So, but you know, the property, for as much as I complain about it, and I'll admit I complain a lot about it. It is a good property. We when we first walked it, we could see the potential in it, and it really is a beautiful property once it's cleaned up. I mean, we've already cleaned up a bunch of stuff. If anybody's following our channel, you can see just the changes that have been made. And we made more changes in the last couple of weeks, and unfortunately the whole fire thing derailed our plans, and so we're having to adjust and redo everything, you know, rethink the way we're gonna do stuff, which is exciting in itself, you know.
Yeah, you know, I asked Mo this, so I'm going to ask you the same question, and that is that. So, how's it feel to be debt free? How's it feel to be free, man?
You know what? we were able to tear the first mortgage up and get rid of it. We didn't burn it like I wanted to, but it still felt really good throwing it away. And then we got all our consumer debt paid off. And at that point, it was like a big giant weight just right off my shoulders.
Yeah.
And I realized that moment that I realized that I had choices that I did not have before was extremely liberating. That kind of scary, I'm not gonna lie. Whenever you're, you know, you spend your entire life not having those choices, and all of a sudden you're confronted with them, you know, it overwhelming, maybe a little scary, completely liberating. I mean, just a whole gamut of emotions.
Yeah, the goulash of emotions.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know, it was interesting. Danny from Deep South said to me when him and I were talking that, you know, freedom is very expensive. And Mo put an interesting spin on it. And I did an interview with Mo, another one of our homesteading friends who kind of went through the same thing, you know, a little while ago. But anyway, he said something that I found very interesting. He said, yeah, that although freedom is expensive, slavery is even more expensive.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw the interview, and he said that, and I was like, you know what, that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
I never thought of it like that before, but it really is more expensive. Just not materially and physically, but metaphysically. The what you have to give up is just, it's not worth it in my book anymore, you know. And you know, I've got this thing now that freedom is not cheap, it's not easy, and it's not safe. And if you make the choice, you know, and we have the luxury right now that we're able to make this decision, and the problems that we face are all first world problems, you know. And if I've said this to you before, if I truly believe what I say I believe, and I think what's going to happen is going to happen, then I'm a fool to not take those risks, you know, because it's better now. I said it before. I said it on the very first video I made after the fire. At least we're not starting. And the whole idea behind that is, you know, we're able to make these choices, and we're able to make these mistakes now when our lives don't depend on it. And the whole purpose of us homesteading, well, at least Angela and I homesteading, is because we want to be as self-sufficient as possible in case something bad happens, you know. And that, honestly, and I realize that's kind of a prepper thing, but that's how I started. I started as a prepper 20 years ago, and we kind of transitioned into homestead or prep steading, and then we transitioned into like full-blown homesteading. And now we've kind of taken a step back, because like I said, there's no infrastructure, so we have to rely more on stuff than skills and what we're building. But the whole, I don't even remember what your original question was.
Yeah, that's all right. You said in there when you were talking that you can't have safety and freedom.
No.
They say anybody that would trade their freedoms for safety deserves neither. And I sit up here in my office, and I mean, I'm up 3 stories off the ground and have a pretty good view of everything. And I watch the deer, running across the field, and then the contrary to that is I look out and look at the fence, and I look at the animals who are fenced up over there, and the animals have safety. We feed them, their needs are met, et cetera, but the deer is free.
Yep.
And I don't think you can have both, and I think you got to kind of pick it. Any comments on that?
No, I agree with you 100%. I agree 100%. As much as I like the livestock, there's nothing as majestic as a big buck. I still remember the first time we came out to your place. I was helping you stand some walls or put up rafters or something, and we came out here, and it was like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, and we pulled up, and there was no house here. So anybody that's seen the house on their homestead will know what I'm talking about. But there was no house there on the property, and there was a doe out in the middle of the field that you could see out your window now.
Yeah.
And she took off, and I said, there's going to be a buck. There's going to be a buck behind her. And sure enough, about 2 minutes later, he should have been wearing a cape, because he looked like a superhero. Seriously. Yeah. And I think about that, and that's the type of freedom that we should all be striving for. That he was living life on his terms.
Yes.
But he didn't. He doesn't live a safe life.
Yep.
It's hard. It's harsh. It's life-threatening at times, but he's living it on his terms.
Yeah, I've taken something out of every interview I've done, and like Mo saying that freedom is expensive, but slavery is more expensive. And I think from here, from today, Garen, just taking the living on your own terms, and it's hard.
Yeah.
But you're living on your own terms.
Well,
you're making your own decisions.
Sorry to interrupt, but
fine.
I say that, and there's a lot of people that aren't free that think they're living on their own terms. Mm-hmm. They how do I put this without being too indelicate? I see people that are criminals. I see people that are trashy, for lack of a better term, that say, well, I'm living life on my own terms. No, you're living life as a parasite off the system. Being free does not mean taking advantage of other people. Mm-hmm. Living on your own terms does not mean, taking subsistence from the government or anything like that. If you're going to be free, be responsible, and be a productive member of society in the process.
Yeah. So leaving your old career and moving states away and all of those things, was it harder mentally or physically?
So under normal circumstances, I would say mentally. Mm-hmm. But I in 2020, I had 2 stents put in my heart. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to lie, the physical aspect of cleaning up this place and doing all the work has been a real challenge over the last 6 months. It's getting better. It's getting better now that the weather's warm and I can get outside and get more exercise, get more cardio work done. Mentally, it's been a chore. Angela and I, there's been a lot of stress, and there's been, we've always argued for 30 years. We've always argued, but that's why I love her. The last 6 months has been hard that way. There's been a lot more arguments. Mm-hmm. For me personally, there was a couple of months right after we moved that I was not 100% mentally, and it manifested itself in me not doing some of the stuff that needed to be done in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing I think people need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. When you make these transitions like we made, and it was, I realized about a month ago that what we did was we bugged out. Mm-hmm. And anybody that's not a prepper, bugging out is when you take all your stuff and you go someplace else to be safe.
Mm-hmm.
And for all intents and purposes, that's what we did, and we were able to do it in an orderly and timely fashion. We didn't have, we were under a clock, but it wasn't that bad, to be honest with you. I can't imagine, the talking about current events, those people in Ukraine
Mm-hmm.
that are dislocated. And I had an acquaintance, a friend that was in Iraq, and we had a conversation one time, and he said, if you're going someplace without a destination, then you're a refugee.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I wanted to do in the event of me losing my job and not being able to afford the house was to be a refugee.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the main driving forces of the 2 or 3 years before we sold the homestead, was getting everything in place so we weren't refugees.
Yeah. So now that you're living free, and have you gone through all of this stuff? Is it getting exciting yet? I mean, is part of you saying, you know what, this might have been the best thing, and you know what, that maybe I'm on the right path? Because I know there was a couple times, Garen, that that through this process that there were things that had happened, much like your fire, or some of those things, that I looked at you and I could see defeat in you. I could see that you were going, oh, not like you gave up, but like right in that moment, it was like, really,
yeah. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, there were times that I was questioning it.
Yeah, sure.
And I think anybody in their right mind,
we all do, sure,
would question the decisions they make like it, because it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not normal for somebody to uproot a perfectly stable life, and we had a good life. We had a beautiful house. We had beautiful property.
Yep.
We had 7 years worth of work into it, and it's unnatural. Well, I'm not going to say unnatural. It takes a really special kind of person that can just uproot themselves like that and not suffer any negative mental consequences. And there were times, and you mentioned the fire. I'll be honest with you, that fire between Angela and I, we're even more resolved.
Mm-hmm.
We're even more resolved now. We got down the fire department was still there putting out the fire, and got down on our knees and prayed for determination. And we were not going to let this stop us. And we're doing a whole video on the lessons learned. We were going to do it this week, but with the puppy getting sick, or one of our dogs is really sick right now, and some other things with work and all that, we didn't get a chance to do it yet. So we're going to try to do it this weekend. But we're more resolved now than ever before.
Yeah, well, I've been around you a lot, Darren, and I know I can remember days when it was minus 20 degrees outside, and there's icicles hanging from your beard, and you're out there giving it hell, a couple months after a stint being put. So, when I say defeat, all I really mean is that, when I looked at you, it was like, oh,
Dude, there were times I wanted to crawl into bed.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I know you've been working towards self-sufficiency for a long, long time. Like I said, you and I have, known each other for quite a while. Do you look at prepping any different
now? Yeah, like I said, we're leaning more heavily on it right now while we're rebuilding the infrastructure and all that stuff. And with everything that's going on in the world, okay, we're going to get into a little politics.
Okay.
When I originally started my channel, I said no politics. I did not want to talk politics. But I've come to realize that with the way things are in the world right now, you cannot discuss being free, and you cannot discuss homesteading without talking politics, because it has wormed its way so far into our everyday lives that you can't extricate yourself from it. So we have to discuss it at some point. The whole prepping thing. The reason that we do it is because we see something coming down the road. And my entire adult life, they've always kicked the can financially down the road in America. And if you looked at it honestly and you looked at it realistically, there was always a road to kick the can down. And I look at the way things are now, and I read different experts and commentaries and stuff, and it honestly looks like there's a dead end sign ahead, and there's not going to be a road to kick it down much longer. And if you're not preparing for that in some form or manner, then when and if that eventuality comes, that whole life-changing event thing that Deep Southern Homestead talks about, or Deep South Homestead talks about, becomes a very huge issue, and the whole key to the whole prepping thing is disasters turn into emergencies, and emergencies turn into inconveniences, and that's what we're shooting for ultimately.
Yeah, well, we talked a little bit about your homestead, but why don't you tell us a little bit about it? What are you currently working on?
So we've got 12 acres, and the big project, the overarching project is to get it cleaned up, because like I said, I moved 250 tires the other day. I'm about halfway through moving all the barrels that are on the property. They're literally hundreds of plastic barrels and broken barrels and stuff. I've moved over 100 of those. I've had a burn pile that was shooting flames. Well, I've got a video out there on our channel, so if you haven't watched our channel yet, go out there and you can actually see how big it was. It was pretty impressive, even by my book. But we're trying to build the infrastructure. The chicken coop was about 90% finished, and I just finished cleaning it up. It sat there for a week as a great big reminder of what a poor job we did. And they finally gave us the go ahead to clean it up. So I spent 3 days getting it clean, and now we're working on rebuilding the chicken coop so we can get our birds back home. And I think we're going to redesign the way the whole workflow on the property is. I've got my permaculture design certification, and at the old place I didn't have the equipment to really do what I wanted to do, to put swells in and stuff. Well, now I've got the equipment, because we were able to, again, the whole financial freedom thing, we were able to take some of the money that we had from the house and buy the proper equipment. You don't need the equipment, but it makes it way easier. Those guys that go out and do it all by hand, by a hat tip to them, man, that's some hard work. But if you go watch those things and you watch it really closely, they're not doing it alone. They're doing it with a community. They've got their circle, and their circle's helping them. But we're going to incorporate more permaculture into it, and it's really literally a blank canvas. We can do anything we want, which is exciting. It's so exciting.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've got plenty of future plans. What are some of the big ones? I mean, I know it's constantly evolving and constantly changing, but what are some of the big ones?
Well, we just had the pond expanded, so now that the next project right there is to get swells in to capture the water better. There's an old hayfield on the property that is overgrown with saplings and Johnson grass, and so the plan is to get swells in, and then we're going to rotate animals on it to rehab the land, the soil and stuff, and get rid of all the Johnson grass. Then we're going to put a hog pen in and get hogs. We're going to try to, I don't know if we're going to try to breed hogs this year or not. We at least want to get hogs in for butcher next fall. We are trying to figure out when we can order new birds this year, because the hatcheries that we order from are taking ship dates all the way into the end of June. So we're trying to figure out if we get the coop up and a brooder building back up quick enough, then we're going to be able to order chicks. And we're not going to be able to do, the whole purpose of us doing the chicken, the coop and the brooder was because we were going to do commercial this year. We were going to sell. We already had 50 pre-orders for turkeys, and at $50 to $75 a bird, that's a lot of money that we lost. Not money that we lost, potential income, a lot of potential income. And that's our ultimate goal is we want to get our expenses so low that we can generate profit off the homestead, so that neither one of us has to go to a JOB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I often talk about backside money versus frontside money, and how you can wage the war on both sides. Right? Frontside money's making more money. Backside money is saving more money. Um, and so we too here at the farm really work hard on just trying to, get our what we have to have every single month. Just smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Because again, you talked earlier about it gives you options.
Right.
Those options give you choices.
And our savings, we've got solar that we need to put in. We've got most of the components for it. We've got a well on the property that we have to pull the head off and see if the casing's still good. And hopefully all we have to do is put a new wellhead on it. But we don't know, because the thing's 70 years old, and you run into all kinds of problems with rust and all that on those old wells. So we don't know about that. And then, we've got a propane generator that needs to be installed. So the energy production that you talked about on your place, we're trying to strive to do that too, because we understand that once we get that portion in place, and yes, it's really important. Unfortunately, there are other things that are more important right now, because we are tied to the grid, and we do have water that we want to get some other things done before we work on that stuff, because it's going to be exponentially harder trying to put all those alternative energy sources in and do these other things. Not just financially, but just finding the time to do it all. I mean, that's probably the one resource that we don't have enough is time.
Yeah, I think that's true for all of us. So with all these things that are going on overseas, Garen, and like the supply chain disruptions and all that, does that change the priority and the way you do things? Because it does for me.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you. It affected Angela way more than it did me, because she was on board, but it was kind of lukewarm on board. But the last 2 years really scared her. She is constantly watching that stuff, and she's to the point now to where she's at the grocery store, man, she's talking about getting free, and she's running into these people, she's listening to conversations. She just the other day was at the grocery store, and some 20-something was in there looking for bean sprouts, and the produce guy said, we don't have bean sprouts, and we're probably not going to have bean sprouts this year. And she was like, what? And it was a huge thing. And my wife just, she said she literally ran over across the aisle and grabbed her and said you can grow it yourself. You don't have to buy it from the store. And the girl looked at the produce guy, and the guy, he was like, yeah, she's right. So Angela literally walked the girl through the store, got the seeds, got the mason jars, took her out to started talking about sweet potatoes. And the guy was like, yeah, we're not going to have sweet potatoes that much either. So took her out and showed her how to choose the proper potatoes to get your slips off of, and was teaching the young girl right there in the store. And that's what everything that's going on in the world right now has done to her. She's all about teaching people now. And I am too. That's the whole reason why we started our channel. I really, when we started it, the whole talking about freedom was not really high on my list, but it's really changed a lot over the last year, because it's been almost a year since we started our channel. And so I am really more focused on, talking about the intentional community, because I saw how important it was. Like I said, we couldn't have done it without the community. And getting people to understand that there's a different way out there.
Yeah, for me, I think it's the same thing. It's just the Life Done Free channel was never supposed to be about a single homestead. It was about the message of free, and there are other alternatives. They're just hard, just like you talked about earlier. To get them is just hard, but they can absolutely be done, right? I mean, you did it. Mo did it. The guy that I had on last did it. And, I have several others lined up who, made the same call and went through the same scary ordeal, in an effort to try to find freedom, or as close to freedom as they could get.
Yeah. And I'm all about it now. In fact, I found a really neat book, and I haven't read the whole book yet, but I read a pretty good summary of it. It's called The 5,000 Year Leap. And basically what the author did was he went through the writings of the founding fathers, and he distilled 28 principles of liberty out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of the principles has its own chapter in this book.
Mm-hmm.
And I've really, for some reason, I've really been getting into that recently, and like doing deep dives on each one of the principles. And I think you and I should do a video series on it. Take turns hosting the meeting and doing it that way, because I think, I am a firm believer in the vision that the founding fathers laid out is the best course of action for us. If you look at the original definitions of the word, a nation was a group of like-minded people that shared a heritage or an outlook on life or a language or something like that. And a country was a form of governance for a nation.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's a subtle difference, but it's an important one, because I honestly think that the country of the United States is fractured. There are more than one nation in this country now, and we're so interspersed that it causes these conflicts, and I think that Washington DC is deaf. They don't listen to us. They don't have to listen to us, and they figured that out a long time before the citizenry did. And the only way that we're going to fix it and we're going to get back to where we need to be is by starting local, and that's that intentional community that we talk about. And if we don't build those intentional communities with the proper morals and ideas behind it, then all we're doing is we're taking a broken concept and reinforcing it. Mm-hmm. So I honestly think that people need to educate themselves about where we came from, the history of this country, and don't sugarcoat it. Right now I'm listening to Dan Carlin. He's an amateur historian, and he does a podcast called Hardcore History. Mm-hmm. Well, he did a 5-hour podcast on the slave trade in the Western Hemisphere, and he goes through the whole history of it, and he doesn't sugarcoat it. And there's times that it sounds like an Antifa or a BLM screed, but it's not. All he's doing is he's talking about the true history of it. Mm-hmm. But by laying out the true history, we know where we made mistakes and how to go about fixing them. So
I put out a video a couple of days ago called "The Illusion of Equity," and it talks about, I don't know if you watched it or not yet, but anyway, it talks about how equity is actually an illusion. And I'm a big believer in that we have modern day slavery today. We have it by easy credit. We have it by just the way the system is set up, and that we've got to be able to buck that system and stand on our own 2 feet. And again, you can't have safety and freedom. You gotta kind of pick those. For me, this and these interviews have been a lot about what's been mandated and all that. But I think really at a deeper place for me, it really was just about realizing that, spending 40 years or 50 years working for somebody else to wake up one day and they give you a gold watch and tell you to piss off, and 4 or 5 years later, you're through Social Security and you're dead, and that's the American way. And that there just has to be something better to life. There has to be more meaning in life than that. And any comments to that?
Yeah, I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. Before I joined the Marine Corps, I was in the early commissioning program for the Army, and then I made some very poor life choices and figured out that was not the life I wanted to lead. And my son is a first responder, and then I worked for the DoD. And so I've spent a huge portion of my life and working with the military and stuff like that. And we were always the good guys. Mm-hmm. The United States, we weren't flawless, and we didn't do things altruistically, but historically we were the good guys. And I've, probably the biggest hurt that I've felt in the past 6-7 years was when I realized that we are no longer the good guys. The United States government is no longer the good guys. Yeah. And it really pains me that history, just because of the way it works, is not going to judge the American people all that kindly for it. And I don't care what you say, for all the problems with us as a nation, we are the most generous people in the world. I've been around the world, and I've seen the way other countries are, and I've seen the way people live in these foreign places, and I've seen the generosity that Americans pour out freely, and they give it, and it pains me that the way things are going, when they write the history books 40, 50 years from now, they're not going to paint us in a good light.
Yeah.
And that hurts. It really does hurt.
Yeah. Well, we've been at this for a little while, so I got one final question for you, and that is that, if there's another family out there, another couple out there who's, living the so-called American dream, working for somebody else, trying to find purpose, or things are being mandated to them, and they're considering making this type of jump, or they're considering seeking freedom, what advice would you give them, Garen?
First off, know that you can do it. You are capable. Anybody can do it. All you have to do is make the decision. It's hard. It's tiresome. But at the end of the day, it's worth it. Being able to know that nobody holds something over you that can force you to do something you don't want to do. And your whole I was forced to homestead thing. You and I have had this conversation before. I don't think anybody's forced to do anything in this country. Everything that people do, they choose to do on their own. Now, I'm not saying that it was their bad choices or good choices, but everybody needs to realize that they're not forced to do anything. They have free will, and they can do what they choose. If they choose to be a slave to the system, then wear those chains well. All right. I chose not to, and you shouldn't either.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Well, hey, everybody out there, if you haven't checked out Grumpy Acres, make sure you go do it. And before we depart, Garen, I'm going to give you the final word. You got anything you want to say before we call this today?
No, just all I can say is go pursue a life done free.
Yeah, go pursue a life done free. Well, hey, I'm Tag. That's Garen. And again, this is Life Done Free. And you know what? Go hold the line. Don't give an inch. Tag out.